Hi guys, so nobody here knows me. I'm not a YouTuber, I'm not famous, I'm just a regular old dude um, with an idea. And my idea is, if you're watching this channel, the description probably says it all, but I have a 1992 Eagle Talon, first gen all-wheel drive car. And in the day, it was pretty stout. It's a 6-volt 4-bolt car, which is pretty popular for what it was. Sorry, I'm walking around in my garage because I get nervous when I do videos because I'm not a YouTuber. But anyways, 6-bolt 4-bolt car. It was a pretty impressive car for back in the day. Sorry, what are we doing here? It was pretty fast for what it was, pretty quick for what it was. It was no slouch. And the car probably made like 320, 350 at the tire, I guess, maybe at the crank, I don't know. It had an AGP RS49, sheet metal intake, factory crank, Eagle rods, JE pistons, 8.5 to 1, nothing stupid, just a regular old car for back then. And if you were in high school, it was a pretty bad bitch for when I went to school, which was back in like 2002. When I got the car in 2001. So back in high school, it was pretty stout, but it is what it is. And the older these cars get, the more I realize that there's no more parts out there for them. Like I probably have a decent selection of parts in my garage just because I've blown up quite a few 6-bolt motors back in the day, as most DSM owners have done. And you just accumulate stuff over the years. You just buy blocks, buy cranks, buy whatever the case might be, transfer cases, transfer transmissions, all that shit, because these cars didn't have a great reputation for being reliable. And I think that's probably not the car's fault. I've been in a bunch of reliable DSMs, but it's probably not the car's fault. It's more so these cars were pretty reasonably priced for the time being. When I was in high school, you could pick one up for fairly cheap. You could buy one for, I think I spent like $2,200 with a slip timing belt. So needed some head work, but we bought the car, and they could be had for relatively cheap, and they were pretty hot little 4-cylinders at the time. I think what I'm doing with this car is probably gonna hit a lot of people wrong. I'm not trying to turn anybody off or upset anybody about what I'm doing. I just think that people need to understand the vision of where I'm going and what we're doing with the car, and understand that 6-bolt parts specifically, even 7-bolt parts, if you're a Mitsubishi guy, you probably know what I'm talking about, but they're getting really, really hard to come by. You can't really just go out there and find a 4G63T in a junkyard. I've been to multiple junkyards in Houston, which is not a small town, and you really can't even find those motors. You can't find the NA motors. You can't find the Hyundai motors, which were, I guess, what Mitsubishi sold off at one point in time. So you could still get like an NA 4G63 with no oil squirters in it. You could still find those for quite some time, but now they're just dried up. You can't find them. There's no way to get your hands on them unless you know somebody is doing a part out, or know somebody has a car that they're getting rid of. And the all-wheel drive transmissions are shit, man. Those things are anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for a bone stock all-wheel drive transmission. So it gets really expensive to try to build one of these cars, and you're taking a car that originally probably cost somebody to buy $1,500, $2,000 for a roller or a chassis, or I mean, you can find them now running and driving for maybe $5,000. But the problem is, if you have one that's a project and you want to build it, it's really, really tough to spend the money on it to get it to where it needs to go, because these are not a 240, right? They're not anything. It's not a Supra. It's not, to my knowledge, I know it's a 90s JDM car. It's never going to be a Type R, or never going to be anything super special. It's just an all-wheel drive DSM, and there's not a whole lot of love for these things anymore, because I think one of the main reasons is because you can't find parts for them. And there's a lot of people that don't want to spend the money on trying to restore one. And if they do restore one, then they don't want to beat on it because it's expensive, and they don't have the best transmissions in the world, right? They don't shift worth a damn. And if you have a 6-bolt that's built and you rag on it, you don't want to blow it up because you can't find 6-bolt parts anymore, right? 7 bolts are still out there a little bit, not even that great, but 6-bolt stuff is getting really, really rare. And that's kind of the one that you wanted, right? The 6-bolt 4-wheel car, what I had at the time was the one you wanted, and it was the best axles with the best motor, and then they went to a 7-bolt, and kind of they got the crank walk reputation, and I don't know. Then they went to the 3rd gen. Anyways, so this is what we're doing with the car. I'm gonna take my 1992 Eagle Talon TSI all-wheel drive from the factory. It was a real all-wheel drive car, and I am tired of trying to source 6-bolt shit for it and transmissions and all that stuff because it's really, really hard to find, and it's starting to get pricey, and I'm just tired of dealing with it. I don't want to go 3 months to try to find a 6-bolt motor that I have to spend a lot of money on to rebuild it and machine it and get it right, and to where it'll make 400 or 500 horsepower. And to be honest, at the time, this is where I think people get hung up on these motors, is at the time, this 4-cylinder motor here, 4G63T, oh, got all this shit on it. It's about all it's good for right now. Not because it's a bad motor, but because it's just parts right now. So these motors in the 90s, were pretty impressive. And I got a lot of parts. Shit, I got 2-cylinder heads here. I got 1-cylinder head back there. I got intake plenums and wiring harnesses and all that shit back there. I've got quite a few parts for this thing because I was young and dumb and blew up a lot of shit. And sorry, I shouldn't cuss, but blew up a lot of stuff. Another 6-bolt head here. 1st gen. I don't have any 2nd gen stuff. 1st gen. We've got crank axles, manifold turbo, crankshaft, flywheel. Like we got a lot of 1st gen stuff here, and I just have sat on this car for the past 10 years and realized that I don't want to. Oh, shit, man, I'm 40. I don't want to throw any more money at something that I've built 5 times and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. And from 1992 to this day and age, there's been a lot of improvements on 4-cylinder motors, and I think that it's time for a little bit of a change, and I'm here to kind of explain what I'm going to do with mine. And a lot of people won't agree with it, but I think it still encompasses the spirit of the car. I really do, because at one point in time, the Eagle Talon was Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. Plymouth Laser, for those of you old heads that know about that car too, it was one of the baddest 4-cylinders out there, and I think that it should still be, even though it's in an old platform. I always thought of old hot rods as being Camaros and Novas and Chevelles and all that shit, but the older I get, the more I realize like there's value in this old car. Like me and my dad spent a lot of time painting it, restoring it, making it look good. It has a clean interior. It's all black with a tan interior. It's relatively straight. It's a nice car, and it's been garaged since I bought it back in 2000. 2001. And it's been completely redone. It used to be, when I bought it, it was red. We completely redid it. We painted it black, under the hood, all the door jambs, all the hatches, under the firewall, all that stuff. So you can't even really tell it was red at one point in time, but it is straight, it's clean, it's black. It's an all-wheel drive Eagle Talon, and I can't bring myself to just like sell it to anybody or crush it. And the more and more I realize how this was progressing, I didn't really have an understanding of like how I was going to make this car something I was going to drive every day, because these cars were not known to be super reliable. I think a lot of that was the tuners, I mentioned it earlier, but a lot of it was because they were cheap and affordable, and young kids got big injectors and big turbos and blew them up. because they couldn't tune, and that's the moral of the story. But I've known a lot of reliable DSMs. I know they're out there. I know that automatic became really, really popular at one point in time. It still is to this day because they make some pretty spicy units. But now to swap my car to an automatic just doesn't make any sense, because I'd have to find a complete automatic car and transfer the transmission, transfer case, differential, all that stuff, all the pedals, everything. So for me, an automatic wasn't the option. So what we're gonna do with this, and this might be like a reveal video, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense, but this thing might die in a few weeks when I figure out everything doesn't fit, but this is what I'm gonna do to it. So I went out, very thankful to be able to do this, but this is what I did. So this is a 2007 Honda Element. It is an all-wheel drive 5-speed car, which apparently is a pretty rare deal. I found this one for fairly cheap, running driving unit. And what I want to do with this car is take the drivetrain out of it. So we're going to do and this is very, very popular in the Civic world, right? You see a lot of these cars on the drag strip, which I know means that there's hope for my car because it works. But we're going to take differential drive shaft. It's going to have to be modified, obviously, with the viscous coupler, element transmission, which needs to be rebuilt because I got this thing for cheap as shit. But element transmission, all-wheel drive, K24, which is a K24A8. Apparently, I didn't know that when I bought it, but now I do. And me and my buddies are going tomorrow to pick up a K24A2 out of a junkyard. So much better bottom end. It's got a forged crank. It's got a better head. It actually has better cams. I met a guy on Facebook that had some Skunk 2 drop-in cams, which are like not that great, but okay for what I'm trying to do with the car. We are going to attempt to mount a K24 on a DSM because I feel like it still embodies the spirit of the car. That's basically what it was at one point in time. What we're gonna do is take one of the baddest 4-cylinders you can get from the factory and stuff it in an Eagle Talon and see if it works. It might not. It might. There's gonna be some fab work. Nobody makes an engine mount kit for this thing, right? I'm gonna have to fabricate engine mounts, get a standalone harness for it, and then axles, which I think I have a plan on the axles, and then obviously a drive shaft, viscous coupler, rear diff mount, and stuff like that. But the goal is for this car, I don't want anything stupid. There's going to be kind of a progression for it. What we're going to do first is get the engine mounted. The best part about this transmission is you don't have to run a drive shaft, so you can actually get it running in front wheel drive to make sure that everything functions the way it's supposed to. Have custom axles for the front built and run NA. So we're going to run NA front wheel drive, proof of concept, make sure it works, and then we're going to potentially there's 2 routes, right? So make it NA all-wheel drive and mount the rear diff and do a drive shaft and all that, 3 axles, or make it turbo front wheel drive, depending on where the money is at the time, to figure out if this is going to work, and see if we can make, I would hope, you can't have a DSM and swap a 6-bolt out of it and put a K24 in it and only make 230 horsepower because you're going to get laughed off this face of the earth. So goal is to make somewhere between the range of, let's put this in goals, right? Stages. Initially out of the gate, it might make 250 at the wheel, front wheel drive, NA. I would think that it would make probably, hopefully with the turbo, which the goal is to have a Sidewinder mount I'm not really set on a turbo yet. I have my eye on like a 62 ball bearing turbo, and it should make anywhere on E85 from like north of 500. That's the goal. I'd like to have it north of 500 or close to 500 at the wheel. That would be fun. I think it'd be more than a handful to drive on the track or the street or whatever, and I think that's in a car that light should be pretty fun. Long term, I would like to see 600, 650 at the tire. I think that'd be fucking, sorry for cussing, I think that'd be pretty rowdy in a car that light, because the DSM is It's probably heavier than a Civic Coupe of the time, but I also think it's just me, and I'm a Mitsubishi guy. I'm not a Honda guy, but we're about to learn a lot about Hondas and how they perform and what they do. And I mean, it's just, it is what it is, right? So, got out of bed to shoot this video. I probably should have already like videotaped a lot of what we done with the car, with the whole purchase of the Element and all that, because it was a pretty fun ride with a bunch of my buddies, and we had a good time. We went, 4 of us went all the way up to Killeen by this thing, which is about 4 hours away, trailered it back, and it wasn't terrible. It was a good time. I think that the journey with the guys was more important than like actually buying the car. But since I've made the decision to do this, I've had quite a few friends, which is pretty cool, that used to hate DSMs that are like, this is pretty valid, you should probably do this. I think it's going to be a banger. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make a hell of an effort at the very least, and see if we can stuff a K motor and an Eagle. Anyways, appreciate you guys. I don't know if this will ever hit YouTube, but I also wanted to have the video footage about what we were going to do with the car in case this ever becomes popular. At least there's some sort of video footage of the thought process and what I was going through at the time. And I think that there's a lot to this little car, even though I don't want to give up on it, even though a lot of people would give up on it because there's not too many options out there. So I appreciate you guys watching, even if it's like 6 followers or whatever. So this is what we're going to do. And hopefully this grows a little bit. Hopefully we meet some people. Hopefully we figure this thing out, and I don't know, go have fun. All right, till next update. See you.